Okay, so here's an example that we're going to use to talk about how to solve quadratic word problems when you're given the equation in factored form. So a dolphin jumps h of x meters above water, and h of x is the function that equals negative 4x times quantity x minus 3. So we're going to take a look at a couple questions here. And so the first question is, what is the highest it gets over water? What is the highest that the dolphin gets over water? Well, the key word in what I just said right now is highest. As soon as you hear something like that, what is the highest it gets over water, you're going to want to know what they're asking. So remember that the types of questions that they like to ask, if you just take a look at what we talked about before, is vertex, x-intercept, and y-intercept. Those are the three favorites. So you want to say which of these three is it asking for? And in this case, it's asking for the vertex. So if it's asking for the vertex, then that's what you need to solve for. Okay, so highest means maximum, so that's keyword for vertex. So the steps to solve for the vertex. So how to solve for the vertex. Step 1. You're going to set equation equal to 0 and solve for x, okay? So I'm going to take this whole equation, which is called h of x, that's the name of it. So the name of the equation is h of x, and the equation itself is negative 4x times x minus 3. I'm going to set that equal to 0. And now I have to choose between two ways to solve. I can either factor or I can use quadratic formula. Those are my two options right now. Well, it's already been factored, and I know this because there's a parentheses. So if there's a parentheses and there's a term in front of it that's being multiplied to it, then it's already factored. So I'm going to use the factoring method because it's already been done for me mostly. So then I'm going to set, step 2 is I'm going to solve this. So I'm going to take that first expression and set it equal to 0, and take the second expression and set it equal to 0 and solve. So this one, to get rid of negative 4 times x, I'm going to divide by negative 4. I'm going to get x equals 0. For this one, I'm going to add 3 to both sides. I'm going to get x equals 3. So those are going to be my two answers for x. The next thing when I solve for the vertex, after I find the x-intercepts, is the reason why this is helpful is that if I were to look at a graph here, these are my x-intercepts because this is when the entire equation equals 0. So at x equals 0, y equals 0, and at x equals 1, 2, 3, y equals 0. And so in this parabola, the vertex is always exactly in the middle of these 2 points. It's always centered exactly because it has to be symmetrical. So if it's halfway between these points, after I solve for this, step 2, I'm going to add the two numbers, add the x's, and there should always be 2, and divide by 2 to get the average, because I want to be exactly halfway between them. So I'm going to take 0 plus 3. I'll do it in a different color. So this was the work, and this was the step. So step 2, and then the work is going to be take 0 plus 3 and divide by 2. And that's going to be 3 divided by 2, which is 1.5. So x equals 1.5 for the vertex. So I just found the vertex. Okay. So add 2 x's, divide by 2. This is the vertex x. All right, so then the next step is if I want the y value of the vertex, I'm going to go ahead and do that just in case. You don't always need it, but plug in vertex x to the original equation and solve for y. And this is going to be the vertex y. So I'll do that also in blue. So my vertex x was x equals 1.5, which I got in step 2. So I'm going to plug that in to my original equation, which is this. So negative 4, and instead of x I write 1.5 times 1.5, and then the parentheses 1.5 minus 3. So you can do this with a calculator, but 1.5 minus 3 is negative 1.5. I'm going to do negative 4 times 1.5 times negative 1.5 on your calculator. I think this is going to be 2.25 times 4, so that's going to be 8, 9. So this is going to be positive 9 because negative times negative is positive. So this is the y value of my vertex. So my vertex is 1.5, comma 9. Okay. All right. The next step in this particular question is to figure out whether they're asking for the x value or the y value. So I'm going to actually go back and tell you what a good thing to do is every time you get a problem for the first step. So before I even did this, a good idea is always to label what x and y stand for in a problem so that you don't get confused later on. So here I'm going to just check. X stands for time because the dolphin jumps this high above the water in x seconds. So x is the time, and the unit you always want to write is seconds. And I'll tell you why in a second. Y is always what the whole h of x equals. So whatever if they say the function equals, then that's the y value. Whatever the function equals, whatever h of x equals. If they say h of x is, that's what y is. So here it says that it's h of x is the meters. So that means that it's the meters, and that's the height of the dolphin. So I'm going to label that right off the bat so that I can take a look here. And the question was, for part A, was what is the highest that the dolphin goes over the water? So that's height. So that's the y value. So I did have to solve for the y value. So the answer for this is going to be 9. So I had to take a look at this. It wasn't the 1.5. So I'll softly X that out. It's 9 meters high. And that's the answer.